Okay, so this is our Nudgie Sangha gathering, June 2nd, 2020, and this is the 9th gathering number 9. So I want to welcome everybody. We've gotten quite a consistent group together, which is rare and great. It's good to see everybody. There's a couple of things on the docket for this week. And when I sent out the email, I wanted to make sure that we got through chapter 6 in the Essentials of Mahamudra, which has some pith, and it also has some clear lineage derivation for where these teachings come from. And from my point of view, it's important to acknowledge that before we go forward deeper into it. And it's not so much a matter of then having a deep historical dig into what each of these teachers represents, and although you certainly could, and actually what we're talking about is the entire lineage of Tibetan Buddhism as we've inherited it is kind of encapsulated here. So at least mostly from the Kagyu side. But I just wanted to do it from the point of view of a read through, and then as we did last week, if you could just note if there's any pith that jumps out and you want to go further with that with the discussion, just hold it till we get to the end this time, and then we'll have a discussion group. And then there's a third item on the agenda, which is to tune in to the current landscape, socio-political, psychological, emotional landscape that we're all experiencing intensely right now. I assume that there's somewhat feeling of the earth shaking underneath our feet. And I wanted to leave some room for us just to have a forum to just talking about it. And we can do that in either order. Might be good to settle in, even though it seems like, wow, you're jerking us out of this kind of very pithy reality right now. But, and I'm open to doing it the other way first, but maybe just to read through and take that almost as kind of chapter 6, the focusing element of bringing our minds down from a kind of maybe somewhat heightened energetic state and just looking back 1,000, 1,200 years here. And then it'll get us to the present. We end up in the present at the end of that. And then maybe we can have a little discussion that then leads into where are we and how much do we feel the connection between what you're studying and practicing together and what's going on in our world right now. So does that seem like an okay way to do it in that order? I know it might pull you out of a kind of intensity that we have, but maybe that's not a bad thing. So we did a certain amount of it, and what I'd like to do is get somebody to read who maybe has some skill at because there's quite a few Tibetan names there. So anybody feel comfortable? Okay, Neil, would you like to read? Yeah, Neil Roberts. And we're going to start on we already did up to page 76. So we're going to start with the origin of Mahamudra in the sutras. Do you see that, Neil? Yeah, you see where it is?
Yeah.
And I just want to, before you start, read that first paragraph, because what I've done is I've gone through a couple of these things which I'd like to read twice. In other words, when Neil reads it, I might ask you to pause, and I'm just going to read it again for emphasis. So the first paragraph is, the Buddha described Mahamudra in various sutras, sometimes calling it Mahamudra and sometimes not. Whatever name the Buddha used, the meaning was the same. Phenomena are naturally pure and sealed as primordially liberated. This is how Mahamudra is described in the sutras. So that's kind of our launch point. And Neil, why don't you read that again and then just keep going for a while, okay?
All right. The origin of Mahamudra in the sutras. The Buddha described Mahamudra in various sutras, sometimes calling it Mahamudra and sometimes not. Whatever name the Buddha used, the meaning was the same. Phenomenon are naturally pure and sealed as primordially liberated. This is how Mahamudra is described in the sutras. The origin of Mahamudra in the Tantras. There are 4 sets of Tantras in the Vajrayana. The first 3, called the lower Tantras, are Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, and Yoga Tantra. Or in English, the Action Tantra, Performance Tantra, and Union Tantra. The higher Tantras are the Anuttara Yoga Tantras, or Unsurpassable Yoga Tantras, which are the main texts of the Vajrayana. Mahamudra is taught in all 4 sets of Tantras. It is taught in every Tantra, in the Unsurpassable Yoga Tantras, and in the lower Tantras, it is spoken of as the hand seal. Just as you seal something closed with your hands, so too phenomenon are sealed with their true nature, emptiness. In addition, Mahamudra is sometimes spoken of in terms of the 4 seals, or mudras. These are the Samaya seal, the Wisdom seal, the Action seal, and the Great Seal, or in Sanskrit, Samaya Mudra, Jnana Mudra, Karma Mudra, and the Mahamudra, or Dharma Mudra. The Anuttara Yoga Tantras are divided into 3 subdivisions: Father Tantras, Mother Tantras, and non-dual Tantras. The Mahamudra is taught in all of these subdivisions. In particular, there is the extraordinary uncommon presentation given in the Kalachakra Tantra, which belongs to the non-dual section of the highest Yoga Tantras. In the context of Kalachakra, Mahamudra is spoken of as the emptiness possessing the supreme of all aspects, indicating that it is the basis for all phenomenon. It is also called the supreme unchanging bliss, because upon realizing it, we pass beyond changeable samsara and arrive at unchanging bliss. Mahamudra is also taught in the Mahamudra Subtle Drop Tantra, which is not among the 4 sets of Tantra, but is instead part of the spiritual songs or Doha literature. In this particular context, subtle drop, in Sanskrit Bindu, Tibetan Tigle, means without change. So Mahamudra is taught in all the sets of Tantras, especially in the 4th and highest set. It is elaborated particularly in the Kalachakra Tantra and the Mahamudra Subtle Drop Tantra. Eliminating mistaken perceptions. Some scholars have attempted to refute Mahamudra. They say that Mahamudra is mistaken because there are some who give instructions and practice the meditation of Mahamudra without understanding what they are doing. Indeed, there is a danger if Mahamudra is practiced in an incorrect way. These criticisms, therefore, are of those who use the name Mahamudra without understanding its meaning. For instance, Sakya Pandita said that meditating upon Mahamudra would probably lead one to take rebirth as an animal or in the formless realm. He said this to encourage those who have an innocent understanding to discard their misunderstanding. It is necessary to reply to the statement because there are some who, without recognizing its intent, will simply take it to mean that Mahamudra is a useless meditation. We can see, however, that both the refutation and the reply to that refutation have a purpose. The Sutras and Tantras in Mahamudra. The text then discusses the way in which the profound meaning of all the Sutras and Tantras is included within Mahamudra. For instance, the emptiness that is realized with transcendent knowledge, which is taught in the 2nd turning of the Wheel of Dharma, is included within Mahamudra. The Buddha essence that is taught in the 3rd turning is also included within Mahamudra, as are the quintessential instructions of the completion stage of the Vajrayana. If we understand Mahamudra, we will see how all of these are included within it. Gampopa said that there are 3 different paths with different practices, but these 3 paths have the same nature. These are taking inference as the path, taking blessings as the path, and taking direct experience as the path. Taking inference as the path refers to, for instance, the various reasonings set forth in the Madhyamaka that show that all things are neither single nor multiple. Taking blessings as the path refers to, for instance, meditation upon the body of a deity, or the practices involving the subtle channels and subtle energies. Taking direct perception as the path is Mahamudra. Taking direct perception as the path is Mahamudra. Mahamudra is pointed out to us as we recognize it, become accustomed to it, and take direct experience as the path. We can also classify the different paths into three groups: the paths that abandon the ground, paths that transform the ground, and paths that recognize the ground. The first path of abandoning the ground is the vehicle of transcendent action of the sutra vehicle, in which some things are abandoned and others are remedies for those things to be abandoned. The second path, transformation of the ground, refers to the practices of the Vajrayana in which we purify our body and mind by meditating on our body being a deity. Our body is thus transformed into the pure body of the deity, and our mind is transformed from discursiveness into wisdom. The third path, recognizing the ground, is Mahamudra. We know that we do not need to abandon or transform the ground. Rather, we know it as it is. When we know the ground as it is, we will recognize all appearances as the magical display of the mind. Thus, Mahamudra is a matter of using direct perception as the path. Thus is also called the quick path. The good qualities of Mahamudra practitioners. Since the teachings of Mahamudra is extraordinary, the lineage of transmission of this teaching must also be extraordinary and distinctive. The text describes the lineage of transformation by first explaining the way in which the Buddha came into India and turned the wheel of Dharma so that the Dharma flourished, and how the Dharma and the teachings of Mahamudra spread. Distant lineage of Mahamudra. There are a number of stories recounted in the text about people in India who had very unusual experiences and high realization of the practice of Mahamudra. The Buddha taught the Mahamudra in the Mahamudra Subtle Drop Tantra, the glorious, unblemished Tantra, and the thoroughly abiding Tantra. The Buddha gave the Mahamudra teachings near the end of his life. After the Buddha passed away, the great Bodhisattva Manjughosha and Avalokiteshvara gave these teachings to Saraha. When Buddha taught Mahamudra, he said that in the future, there would be great bodhisattvas who would practice and propagate this teaching. In particular, he named Saraha and Nagarjuna. It came to pass that the great bodhisattva Manjushri appeared as a bodhisattva named Ratnamati, and the great bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara appeared as a bodhisattva named Sukhanata. These two bodhisattvas gave the Mahamudra teachings to Saraha, who achieved immediate liberation, becoming a siddha, or accomplished person. Saraha served as the source through which the Mahamudra spread and flourished in India. He passed the Mahamudra teachings to Nagarjuna, who, prior to meeting with Saraha, was a pandita, or scholar. After meeting with Saraha, Nagarjuna became a great adept, actualized Mahamudra, and lived as a siddha. Nagarjuna passed the lineage of quintessential oral instructions on the practice of Mahamudra to Shivari. Shivari not only received the teachings directly from Saraha, but also met the same two bodhisattvas who were emanations of Manjughosha and Avalokiteshvara, respectively, in a visionary manner, and received the Mahamudra teachings directly from them. Maitripa heard of Shivari and his tradition of oral instructions, and, with profound faith, immediately went to southern India to meet with him. Maitripa underwent tremendous difficulties and hardships on his journey. Eventually, he succeeded in meeting Shivari and received all of the Mahamudra instructions in their complete form. Maitripa then went to central India, where he disseminated these teachings to others. This transmission is known as the distant lineage of Mahamudra. The close lineage. There is also a close lineage of Mahamudra begins with Tilopa, who received the teachings of Mahamudra from Vajradhara.
Neil, hold 1 second, please, there.
Yeah.
Okay, just breathe for a minute. So we're now going to be moving towards the direct transmission through teachers that we've read about, that we know in their present forms. So this is very close to home. So I just want to suggest, even if it seems a little like esoteric or something like that, just try to feel the presence of these particular people. We're connected to them just by virtue of studying together in this way. And just try to do shamatha practice with keeping your mind tuned into what Neil is reading here. And in particular, each one of these people was a genuine, authentic individual being who was on this same path that we're on. So just see if you can tune your mind into that and just receive it. It doesn't have to be, you know, a big fancy deal or anything like that, but see if you can stay with that and feel like you're getting the transmission directly from them. Okay? All right, go ahead, Neil.
Okay, so I'll start over again. The close lineage. There is also a close lineage of Mahamudra that begins with Tilopa, who received the teachings of Mahamudra from Vajradhara. The Buddha has three bodies: the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. The Buddha Shakyamuni was a Nirmanakaya, or emanation body, which is the body visible to ordinary beings. He is called a supreme emanation body because he gave the teachings to achieve enlightenment, turned the wheel of Dharma, demonstrated the way of passing into nirvana, and so forth. After his death, that particular supreme emanation body no longer existed. However, his mind continued. The Buddha's mind is of the nature of wisdom, or the wisdom Dharmakaya. The wisdom knows the full variety and the nature of all phenomenon, and is endowed with positive qualities such as compassion. The wisdom Dharmakaya did not pass into nirvana but remained, so that fortunate students are still able to meet with it. In that way, it is called the Vajra Dharmakaya, in which Vajra means unchangeable. The Dharmakaya also appears in the form of the Sambhogakaya. In the Sambhogakaya, the Buddha appears like Vajradhara, who is depicted on the scroll paintings or tankas, with a dark blue body, one face, two arms, and wearing the customary ornaments. It is possible for students with ability and good fortune to meet with that Sambhogakaya emanation. There is, however, no difference between the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya Buddha who appeared in this world. Tilopa met directly with the Sambhogakaya Vajradhara, received the instructions on Mahamudra from him, and achieved realization. The great Pandita Naropa received a prophecy from Chakrasamvara and the Dakinis that he must go to the eastern part of India and meet Tilopa. Enduring great difficulties, he traveled there, met with Tilopa, and studied with him. In the end, he received instructions on Mahamudra and was able to practice and realize Mahamudra and become a Siddha. Then he began to gather students, including Maitripa, who was said to be a student equal to Naropa. These are the origins of the close or proximate lineage of Mahamudra. In India, these students were, for the most part, the 84 Mahasiddhas. From the time Buddha appeared in India until the time his doctrine disappeared from there, it spread widely and vastly. From among the many teachings that were given and the many people who accomplished great things, the best among them were those who achieved realization because of Mahamudra: Saraha, Nagarjuna, Shivari, Maitripa, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, and many others. The instructions that they gave to their students were these instructions on Mahamudra. Thus, from among the many oral instructions, teachings, and doctrines that spread throughout India under the banner of the Buddha, the highest among them was Mahamudra. The lineage in Tibet. Through the Vajrayana teachings and the oral instructions of Mahamudra, the teaching of Mahamudra then spread in Tibet. Marpa, the translator, was the first Tibetan to receive the Mahamudra teachings. In the 12th century CE, Marpa went to India and took Naropa and Maitripa as his principal gurus. He remained in India for a long time, receiving the teachings of the Vajrayana and of Mahamudra, practiced them, and achieved realization. He gave these teachings to Milarepa, who then gave them to Gempopa. Marpa, Milarepa, and Gempopa illustrate three different ways to practice Mahamudra and achieve realization, and show that a person of any station in life is able to practice and achieve realization. Marpa was married, owned a house and many possessions, and had a circle of students. In these circumstances, Marpa achieved great realization. Milarepa practiced the simple lifestyle of a yogi, He had neither wealth nor home and practiced in solitary places. Milarepa achieved complete enlightenment in one lifetime. Gampopa practiced Mahamudra as a monk. He achieved realization and was able to greatly enhance the welfare of sentient beings through establishing a monastic system. While the teaching of Mahamudra as it is practiced in India was a very profound dharma, it was practiced in a superior way in Tibet. We might believe that in this degenerate time, the teachings of Mahamudra has declined and been corrupted, and consequently, even if we were to practice, we would not be able to achieve the result. However, the Buddha indicated that there is no reason to have such doubt. While teaching the King of Meditation Sutra, which is about Mahamudra, the Buddha said that in the future, the teachings would decline and be corrupted. He asked, "Who among you will preserve this teaching, propagate it, and cause it to flourish?" A young monk named Chandaraparbha said, "I will. In the future, I will propagate this teaching." The Buddha replied, "It is just as you say. In the future, you will take birth in a northern land as a monk named Vimalaprabha. You will propagate the King of Meditation Sutra and will cause it to flourish." In the White Lotus of Compassion Sutra, the Buddha said that in the future, a monk named Javaka would ensure that the practice of meditation survived in an unbroken and unstained way. In accordance with that prediction, it came to pass that a boy named Javaka was born in Tibet. He became known as Gampopa, and he gathered around him many students and gave these central teachings. Since that time, the lineage has continued, with gurus transmitting it from one generation to the next. Students have continued to meditate and achieve realization, and so the teachings of the Mahamudra has not declined or degenerated. With great exertion, great devotion, and great confidence, we can achieve the same realization that Marpa, Milarepa, and Gampopa achieved. The lineage holders of Mahamudra. The lineage of Mahamudra has been passed down from teacher to student very carefully. Gampopa spread these teachings widely, with his activity being extraordinary, far-reaching, and of great benefit to sentient beings. This was foreseen by Milarepa, who said to Gampopa, "You should go to the mountain of Daglagampo, because I feel that if you go there, it will bring a great benefit for sentient beings and the Buddhist teachings." After Gampopa departed for that mountain, Milarepa said to his other students, "I had a dream, and in this dream, a wild vulture flew into the sky and landed upon the peak of a mountain. The vulture was surrounded by beautiful white swans so numerous that they completely filled the sky." Milarepa explained that Gampopa was the vulture and that the white swans were the hundreds of students who would gather around him and benefit from him. Milarepa concluded by saying, "Although I myself am very poor, I see a great wealth of benefit for sentient beings coming about through the activity of my student Gampopa." Following the instructions of his guru, Gampopa went to Daglagampo and began to teach the Dharma there. He began in a desolate place and thought there was no one to teach, but he attracted a huge flock of great meditators, said to number about 800, who came to hear him teach the Dharma and to practice in accordance with his instructions. The Kagyu teachings are said to comprise 4 greater and 8 lesser lineages. The 4 greater schools refer to those who were the direct disciples of Gampopa, including the great master Pagmadrupa. The 8 lesser schools refer to the lineages that came from the 8 students of Pagmadrupa. Some say the greater schools were better than the lesser schools, but that's incorrect. Gampopa's great accomplishment is rooted in the promise that he made many lifetimes previously at the time of the Buddha, when he took a vow to propagate the teachings of Mahamudra in the future. Because of the profundity of the meditation teaching and the accomplishment of Gampopa, those students who have followed in his lineage have been able to generate very powerful, stable, and truly extraordinary meditation. Gampopa taught the Dharma at Daglagampo and eventually passed into nirvana. His principal student was a nephew, Gomsultram Nyingmo, Gomstrul for short, who spent much of his time at with Gampopa and received his teachings completely. Gamstul possessed a large treasury of quintessential instructions, and he wrote many of these down and became an important teacher. Thus, in Moonlight of Mahamudra, you will see many citations from the teacher Gamstul. When Gamstul passed into nirvana, the succession of this lineage passed to a cousin who held the seat of Dagla Gampo. He had met Gampopa and studied for many years with Gamstul, and thus he was the direct student of both of them. He too came to possess a great treasury of quintessential instructions, which he passed on to future generations. He is referred to in this text by the name Gomchung. The three men from Kham, as they were known, were the other principal students of Gampopa. The one whose enlightened activity was most prolific was the teacher known as Pagmadrupa. He had 8 accomplished students, each of whom became the founders of a lineage in their own right. Those lineages became known as the 8 lesser lineages of the Dakpo Kagyu. Pagmadrupa is also known as Dorje Gyalpo, and the text cites his teachings too on many occasions. Among the 8 students of Padmadrupa, the one whose enlightened activity was the vastest was Lingrepa. He founded one of the 4 major schools of the Kagyu, known as the Drukpa Kagyu. The text cites his teachings on many occasions, as he was a very powerful propagator of the teachings of Mahamudra. Sometimes it refers to him by his full name, Lingrepa Pema Dorje, and sometimes just as Lingre. Lingrepa's principal student, Sangpa Gyare Yeshe Dorje, was a highly accomplished meditator and supreme teacher of the Drukpa Kagyu. The text refers to him in many times as Sangpa Gyare, and sometimes as just Gyare. All of these teachers studied Mahamudra earnestly and listened well. They meditated in accordance with the way they had been instructed, diligently and with exertion and intelligence. Having accomplished these teachings, they then passed them on to their own students. Sometimes, in the text of one teacher, a certain instruction might not be very clear, and so the instructions of another teacher are cited. For instance, we might find something that Gampopa said that sounds very intriguing, but it's not clear what he meant. So we have to refer to teachings that were given by one of his students, perhaps Gamstul or Padmadrupa, where the meaning of Gampopa's words is clarified. Or there may be a passage in the principal teaching of one of the great gurus that is particularly appropriate or practical. Having several authentic sources of the quintessential teachings brings great benefit for students.
Okay. I'll pause there for a second and just go back. The close lineage of Mahamudra. Neil, if you would just read that page. And, you know, just a sense of these are really, really directly the people that we heard about studying with Trungpa Rinpoche. Whole seminars, whole workshops happened about various teachers like Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, and then the rest are the Karmapa lineage. So I just want to like almost think of this as like we're doing the lineage chant right now, and invoking the Kagyu lineage by reading this. So Neil, would you read that page, please?
My pleasure. The close lineage of Mahamudra. Tilopa, 988 to 1069. An emanation of Chakrasamvara who received Mahamudra teachings from Vajradhara. Naropa, 1016 to 1100. An abbot at Nalanda University who left and became Tilopa's student. Marpa, 1012 to 1097. A Tibetan who went to India 3 times and studied under Naropa and Maitripa. Milarepa, 1040 to 1123. A hermit who received teachings from Marpa and thoroughly practiced Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa. Gampopa, 1079 to 1153. A master who received Mahamudra teachings from Milarepa and combined these with the Kadampa teachings of Atisha, founded the first Kagyu monastery. Dusam Kimpa, the first Karmapa who took Gampopa's teachings of Mahamudra and founded the Karma Kagyu lineage. Karma Pakshi, 1206 to 1283, the second Karmapa who was known for his practice and ability to perform miracles. Rangjung Dorje, 1284 to 1339, the third Karmapa who was a great scholar who wrote many treatises on meditation. Each Karmapa passed down the Mahamudra teachings right up to Trungpa Rinpoche, who was asked to set up the monastic college in Rumtek Sikkim by the 16th Karmapa to preserve the lineage.
Great. Yeah, wonderful job, Neil. Thank you. Really animated it. Felt alive. So with the prayer flags behind you there, pretty cool. In the breeze, cloudy sky. So we have at times gone sort of more deeply into these, and as I'm thinking about it, I'm sure that Larry and Michael will confirm that in our early training, these teachers, particularly in the last group, the lineage holders, were extremely vibrantly presented to us as representing different archetypes, different types of lifestyles that and styles of approaching the Dharma. So you could find, your archetype in there. Significantly, Marpa was a householder and also a translator. So in some sense, our teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche, had elements of all these teachers, but Marpa was a particularly strong flavor, that kind of householder and translating capacity. So you can just, some of you know more or less about this lineage and tradition, but they're incredibly colorful people. And here's the news that I wanted to share. It wasn't easy for any of them. And it's like, this was not a cakewalk for any of these teachers. In fact, probably their journey was marked by tremendous challenge and hardship, to the point where I'm sure they all thought of giving up at different points along the way. Larry, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong about that.
You're not wrong.
And yeah, and even to an extent that we might even flinch to think about committing to something in that kind of profound a way and facing those hardships. So I think maybe let's take one more minute to go to our Dharma uncles for a little commentary, just like it said. If we have we have 3 Dharma uncles with us, and maybe just if you want to add anything, Larry, to just this stage of the unfolding of presenting the roots and the origins of this tradition. Would you like to add anything?
Well, I could. I mean, it's a mouthful, what we just listened to. So it's a lot of stuff, a lot of people being named. And these are, quite frankly, just a few of the people. There's a lot more that we could learn about. But I think it's important for us to actually make some study, and we're not going to do that in this weekly gathering probably, but to make some study of the major figures of the lineage, the Kagyu lineage, just in the same way that David and Michael and I were trained by Trungpa Rinpoche. I think for the first maybe 6 or 7 years of his time in North America, he gave at least a dozen or maybe even 24 seminars on, especially, he gave 2 or 3 seminars on Naropa, at least 2 on Marpa, at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 on Milarepa. And the Karmapas, a couple seminars. Jamgon Kongtrul the Great, who was, 1 generation earlier than his own teacher, he gave a couple seminars. Padmasambhava, who was the kind of really person who made Tibetan Buddhism possible, you could call him among the founders of the Nyingma lineage. He gave at least 2 or 3 seminars. So for those of us who studied with Trungpa Rinpoche in those, first 6, 7 years, we were just flooded with information, and it wasn't information, that's actually not the right word. We were flooded with a kind of presence of these lineage figures. And as David mentioned, each one of them is really quite different from each other. Their character, who they were as human beings, they were all really quite different in their ways of being in the world. Most of them were either kind of solitary yogi types, not particularly monastic. Gampopa was really the first of the monastic people in our lineage. So I think it's somehow, we have to find a way for all of you and other generations of people coming into this to find a way to really learn about these people. Because especially for those of you who are going to pursue the more in-depth practice of Mahamudra, which involves doing the preliminary practices, you might find yourself doing 100,000 prostrations, visualizing a tree filled with all of these characters. And if you don't know who any of them are, that's a pretty strange thing to be doing. And this was something that happened. One of my friends was teaching a number of people who were new Ngundro practitioners, who were prostrating, taking refuge, trying to visualize some of these 40-some characters up in a tree. And they had no connection whatsoever with any of them, because at that point in our particular community, the teaching of these people's life stories had somehow waned and disappeared. And that was a kind of wake-up call for a few of us, like, gee, we didn't realize that that had just not been part of the vocabulary of people. I think reading the life story of Milarepa is probably the most important of all of them, because he's so seminal, and he went through such incredible difficulties, and is noted for achieving complete enlightenment in this one lifetime, having been a murderer as a young man. So he did all sorts of really horrible things because of his aunt and other relatives. And yet he persevered really, really strenuously through a lot of adversity and attained complete enlightenment. Marpa, as David mentioned, because he's a householder, not a monk particularly, and not an ascetic like Milarepa, he's a lot easier to identify with for all of us householders. And that biography also happens to be a really great story. Both of these biographies were written by this great yogi, Sanyong Haroka, who I think kind of created a whole genre of Tibetan literature that we would consider great literature. And I have to say, a lot of the biographies in the Tibetan tradition, a lot of them are not that real interesting. Either the person is too miraculous to connect with, or it's just a laundry list of things that they did and saw. But the biographies of Marpa and Milarepa are unusually gripping. And I think those are really the best place to start, because they're the best stories. And hopefully that will inspire you to read about Tilopa, who is a really odd guy and very interesting, and Naropa, great scholar, who then became a great yogi. And all of these biographies, they're all in English. So there's a little tidbit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah.
Let's go through the old guard. Michael, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I'm not like Daniel or Larry, a scholar, so to speak. So I'm not sure how much what I have to say will clarify things. But my experience of these teachings that Trungpa Rinpoche gave in these men and women who came before us has a lot to do with obvious lineage, but the quality of adhisthana. You know, that there's, on the one hand, you could look at this as kind of a history book. Oh, there's these people who did these things, and you can look at it as kind of a dry history, which I think is fine. But from the practitioner's point of view, there's a juice involved here, and it's alive. And Rinpoche would speak about it as magic. And the only way I can explain it, I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's the best metaphor. I'm not a real sports guy per se, but I used to play baseball, and I used to pitch and throw a baseball. And when you pick a baseball up, suddenly the whole thing makes sense. You get the whole thing. And in many respects, what these men and women passed down over these many centuries is this very distilled down juice that once you pick it up and you get it, the whole game makes sense. And it becomes alive. And there are many aspects to that, obviously, but one of the ones that always surprises me is the phenomenal world responds to the juice. That the phenomenal world gets the juice. It doesn't matter if you're in Tibet or if you're in South Philly. The situation gets the juice. And there's a conversation that immediately picks up. It's like baseball. Everything plays baseball. The whole thing's a baseball game in a way. But because you're handed this ball, the whole situation suddenly responds. And sometimes, like if you were spending time with the Karmapa or Trungpa Rinpoche, boy, does it respond. It's like, how'd that happen? So that would be the only thing that I would respond, that the lineage is not just a bunch of names. It's something that's passed down in a distilled way and placed in your hand. And once you understand that, the whole situation responds.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Perfect. And then I just wanted to invite Daniel to jump in and just preface it by saying, as we look at this lineage, you know, Daniel is part of this same lineage, quite literally. And I believe that Garwang Rinpoche, who's not only Daniel's mentor and guru, but there's some kind of consortium going on there between them. They're collaborating on some stuff that I don't think we've even heard the beginning of yet. That Garwang Rinpoche is said to be an emanation of Tilopa. Is that right, Daniel?
Yeah. So
how's that for a connection? That's pretty good.
It's amazing. Like, it feels like, for me, it feels like I have a direct relationship with Tilopa, actually. I'll give you an example. So maybe 10 years ago, when I was with Rinpoche for a couple of years, Rinpoche knows so Tilopa has a relationship. If you know anything about Tilopa's story, there's fish come into play here. So Tilopa is often pictured with a fish, and I'm vegetarian, right? So for the there was about 2 years where Rinpoche was always inviting me to dinner, like a couple of times a week, and we'd go to sushi. And so Rinpoche would be eating all this fish, and of course, that's how I learned a lot of Dharma, over sushi at a restaurant with Rinpoche talking about Tilopa. So, some of these stories are still alive. And I was going to say that it's interesting this is coming up, because recently Rinpoche has been telling me, we've been talking a lot about what's going on in the US and Corona and what's happening recently. So we've been talking about that a lot. And Rinpoche has been encouraging me to read. He keeps saying, read the Mahasiddha biographies. Read the Mahasiddha biographies. And some of the comments he's saying is, try and find a time when they were chilling out. Right? Try and find a time when they're chilling out. And he also is saying, and notice that their life is so difficult and the circumstances they're in are so difficult. And it's the difficulties that led to the Mahasiddhas. You know, that's what produced them. So that's Rinpoche's message at the moment, which is quite kind of cool, that this lineage is coming up at this time as well.
Okay. So that feels like a very good prologue, and maybe we could throw it open and, you know, let's try to stay fluid. If you can stay with the tone or the mood of this, but if you want to bring it into present realities and talk about what's going on and what you're experiencing or any aspect of what's on your mind or heart, let's just keep it open for tonight in that way. We have plenty of time. We just kind of digested quite a bit. So if anybody, let's call this you know, open forum for anything that anybody wants to share coming off these threads. So we can see each other. You can just open your mic and go for it if you have something to lead us into.
Hey, David?
Yes, Matt.
I was going to ask to maybe like bridge the gap in going into current events. Like we talk about seeing the self clearly and without illusion or seeing beyond the self. And I wonder how that applies to like seeing the world clearly, because I know, and you know, we've been talking about things being in a challenged place, but at the same time, I could also see things are maybe the best they've ever been, and I could see both of those, you know, simultaneously. So I wonder how you see the world clearly. Because it's hard for me to see it as a dark time sometimes when I also see, you know, some amazing things happening. So how do you see the world clearly? How do you decide what kind of time it is, if that makes sense? And I'm going to mute.
No, that's great. Yeah. So I'll start, but then we'll bring the uncles in for sure, because it's kind of a simple question on the surface, but you know, it has the full range of like, is this a dark time or is this is this great bliss? What are we talking about here? So, you know, the thought that come through to me is prajna and discernment. And looking at it in terms of the chapter we just read, it's the ability to discern that which is enhancing or kind of moving forward, moving upward, moving in the right direction, and knowing how to shed, you know, the things that are obstacles, even if they're very deeply rooted. So it seems like this is a good time to really sharpen the sort of prajna, and to look, well, what should we shed? And even as a society, even as a group of people, as individuals, and then what could we cultivate, you know? And in my mind, that's always true, and I really appreciate what Daniel and Garwang Rinpoche are bringing. I, as a 72-year-old person, every once in a while in the middle of this, I say, I've seen all this before. I've seen riots, I've seen racism, I've seen wars, I've seen the onset of plagues. And you just go, okay, well, we're in some kind of cycle, and this is right now, it's a very intense cycle. So you either look at it as some people are looking at it as like doomsday scenario that's happening, perfect doomsday scenario, which justifies and rationalizes that sort of negative view of the world and themselves anyhow. Okay, great, I'm finally right. Everything sucks, and we're going to be completely overwhelmed now, as I've been saying all along. Or you see it as a fruition of previous karmas, a ripening, and a chance to purify, personally and societally. So that discernment seems to be key, and it also seems like there's an accelerated opportunity to actually realize the nature of the experience that you're having, which is not really tainted in any fundamental way. You know, even though it has tremendous obstacles and klesha festival of all kinds going on. So it depends on your view that you can hold during this kind of challenging energetic time. It's actually great for practice. It sounds cliched and whatever you want to say, but it's true. So Matt, is that any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. it's so, yeah, I mean, it's also like, I hear there's an aspect to what you're saying. Sounds like you, yeah, because there's that view of cycles, like this is something we've seen before. And then there's the concept of we're moving towards something in a linear way. And then the idea that it's all how we see it anyway. You're saying that, you learning your own discrimination, there's experience is never tainted in a certain way. There's always there's a constancy and a purity, and all those things sort of exist together is kind of what I'm taking from what you're saying, if I'm interpreting correctly.
Well, and yeah, and then there's one other piece which I think we should get into a little bit tonight, which is the socio-political dimension, which number one son Ethan, who is like the scout for the next expeditionary force as far as that goes, is raising the point that is the Dharma, the traditional Dharma, strong in its prajna or assessment of the socio-political, the larger scale societal issues? Because it often leads to what one could call a bypassing of those issues. And I think many modern younger students are going, let's look again and see if we're not bypassing some of these important institutional issues, very deeply habituated issues that are transpersonal, that are beyond just the individual. Oh, go practice, you go work on yourself. That would be the answer. Yeah, it's your perception, it's your bias. So I want to leave room open for that. If those two things can get merged, the dharmic perspective and some kind of contemporary socio-political understanding, which I just want to say, Trungpa Rinpoche, that's what he was about, frankly, as far as I was concerned. That's exactly, he knew what was happening all over the world politically. He was clearly into building a social fabric that would involve complete engagement in the society that we were living in. So in a way, it's time for that. It's a perfect trigger point. But I believe that it's in the teachings if you look for it with that view. So Michael, you want to add anything to that, or Larry? Anybody?
Well, I would just quickly remark to the first statement in the reading of the text, which is that the phenomenal world, from the point of view of a practitioner, the familiarity with the fact that the phenomenal world is naturally pure and sealed as primordially liberated. That in order to engage the situation, that view is the fundamental move. And it's from that ability to see clearly, as you were saying, David, with prajna, to see clearly, that one can then look at the confusion in the world. From at least the way I was taught by Trungpa Rinpoche. He used the word basic goodness in the Shambhala phraseology. So the practice of becoming familiar with Mahamudra, the awakened state, is not an end product. It's the way that we can see so that we can conduct ourselves in a particular way. From there, what I've learned is the first thing one does once one has that view and viewing human society is to go toward the health. That's the first move, is what's happening. I mean, right now there's a lot of toxicity, and chaos, and confusion, and woundedness, and isolation, and that we tend to go toward, which I think has a blinding effect. From my vantage point, this is purely my point of view, is the view of Mahamudra, that one can actually look and find the health first and foremost. There's a lot of healthy things going on here. Once one is able to see the health, then you face the toxicity. Then you explore the violence in the society. Then you look at, I always there's a lot of karma working out right now. I think when we kill 100 million or 200 million buffalo over 20 years in the mid 1800s. So, you don't do stuff like that and not end up having Donald Trump. You don't do stuff like that and not have race riots. This is a natural outcome of a karmic we've worked really, really hard to fuck this up. And this is a natural outcome. But when one has the view of Mahamudra, one can actually see the primordial. One final thing, I'll shut up. I remember a guy said to me, we were talking about basic goodness. He goes, now, how could Adolf Hitler be basically good? I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. How could Adolf Hitler be basically good? I said, well, his mustache hairs grew. That's what happened. They grew just like yours grows. His eyelashes worked. There's something fundamental going on here. And that once we become familiar with that fundamental aspect, we can actually see the situation clearly.
Okay, so Mike's, let's jump into the directly looking at the socio-political engine. I mean, you're talking about the ground, really having a proper relationship to the ground of experience. But I want to see if the women could jump in here and we get a little bit of a flip perspective, from if anybody, you could be a woman and represent whatever perspective you want to represent, but there's an obvious, the boat is tipping to the right here. Let's tip it back over to the left. So could we get a volunteer? Anybody? Okay, Melissa, you're volunteering, okay. We're not hearing you. Don't know why. You're not muted. We don't hear you, Melissa. Oh, that's a shame.
I could jump in.
Okay, yeah, Angie?
Bringing that up.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll get back to you, Melissa, okay?
I would, I don't know what to talk about, but, like yesterday, people are protesting outside of my window, walking on FDR Drive. It's I don't know, like I feel like it's like coronavirus day one again for me. So I'm really stressed out. And I think that there's, like, for instance, I brought up today on another call I was on with a feng shui call with all white people, and I'm the only Asian person. Like, let's talk about this. And then so a woman sat there telling me how she understands racism because when she came to the US, she had a British accent. So I don't know, I think we just need to make space for this. And I'm getting kind of emotional, but I think it's really intense in New York right now. And I don't know if it's appropriate to kind of talk about the absolute truth when there's a lot of things that are happening right in front of us. So I think it's really, we're all studying Tibetan Buddhism, and I think it's great that we talked about lineage today because that's one of the most important things, to not culturally appropriate something. And we really need to talk about this because we're all studying something that comes from a culture that's not our own. And how do we do better? And I don't know, I'm just starting to see, like, I'm just surrounded by a lot of white people that like a lot of Asian things. And I just think it needs to be talked about. And sorry I came out a little angry, but I'm really tired from the whole day. Like, it was exhausting. And David, you're muted, I think, if you're talking.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for jumping in. And it's completely, you know, invited specifically tonight that we have a kind of thorough conversation. So you raised a couple of interesting things there. You know, one is the cultural appropriation, and two is the visceral or relative, you know, level of what's going on, not being, you know, mansplained by us old white guys. You know, so that's a. But I'm thinking, can we bring this together? So if you can go a little further into it, it would be helpful for everybody. It wouldn't just be you doing your thing. It'd be all of us meeting our minds together.
Well, I don't know. Well, I think that, well, I don't know if, how this came up for me is because I've been ignoring it too. However, because I'm starting to teach now, I think it's important to step up and talk about these things and become uncomfortable. And then maybe for white people, that means being quiet sometimes and giving space to other people, for women to talk, for people of color to talk. But I realized I reached out to David. David was very open to it. I said, David, we should talk about this. We're in a Sangha, we're in a community, and we're studying Tibetan Buddhism. So we should talk about this. And I reached out to 2 other teachers, and I'm like, why am I reaching out to my teachers? Like, and why do I have to tell them to do this? And maybe David was going to do this anyway, but then it also was a mirror for me to do the same for my students. But I think we can all do better, and just, you know, even I can do better. And I'm grateful. I learned feng shui, and I learned about my Asian heritage, and I learned about Buddhism through my white teachers that had Asian teachers. So I'm very grateful for that, and I love that. But I don't know, there's like you know, the first time I went to Dechen Choling, I got so mad because I was sitting there and I'm like, I'm in Dechen Choling with all these Europeans, and they're doing some pseudo like Asian thing, and you know, you just have to think of, I don't know, we all have to just examine it. And I don't think anyone's doing anything wrong, obviously. And I've been ignoring it too, probably up until like 2 days ago, my whole life. So I think it's just, I don't know. That's all I have to say. I think I just needed to say something.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's see if anybody else wants to. Melissa, did you get your mic working yet? No. Not hearing you. It's weird.
If you open the chat up, I'll message with Melissa. I mean, if she would like, I'm sure she understands how the audio preferences work, but you know, I do audio and computers, so I could chat with her on the side if that would be helpful. But I think the chat's restricted right now. Just throwing that out there. Okay.
But do you know why she's not audible?
I do not, no.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, it looks like you're still nudging it. So it'd be better to be able to talk. Thanks for that offer, Mike, but I think it'd be better if we could just hear and less circuitous. So, but you know, this is what's that song? It's unwritten. As far as this goes, it's not like we have, as far as I'm concerned, we covered the agenda for the evening. I wanted to bow to the lineage as we're talking about this material. But after that, I want to bow to the present moment and whatever it's bringing. So, you know, if you don't jump in, you missed your chance to do it. So,
David, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Rebecca, hi.
Hi, Rebecca.
Thank you, Angie.
Can't see you very well though. You're kind of backlit, but yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Angie, for sharing what you shared. it feels really profound and really poignant. And I just want to thank you. And thank you, David, for opening up the space, you know, talking about lineage. And I think it was just really beautiful to go through that. And, you know, it's a really interesting thing to look into your own family lineage, though. And I don't know if that's something a lot of people do, but, you know, I went through my family lineage, and I have a tiny bit of Native American blood, which, you know, I understand that's the case for a lot of people. And it's like, why is that? And I've gone back into my family lineage, and it's most likely that a Native woman was traded off to a French white person who had power for protection, to protect the tribe. Chippewa is my bloodline. And I'm a descendant of that. I'm sure she wasn't her choice. I'm sure she was raped. She made children, and I'm a descendant of that. And so I think if we all look back, you know, like, this belongs to all of us. This is not somebody else's problem. This is our heritage. This is what we're inheriting. And it's just in our faces. And making a personal connection to it is, to me, really important, especially for us white folk who have the privilege of not being bothered by it if we don't want to be bothered by it. And that's part of why we are where we are. That's why we have people screaming in the streets. What is it going to take to get us out of our, what I describe as an animal realm stupor? And Rinpoche says right in the book, I like to bring it back to the teachings. Some people criticize Mahamudra for being useless meditation, quote unquote. And he says there's a danger of being reborn in a formless realm or animal realm. And I think that's true. And I do see that in Buddhism, you know, in the lineage I have engaged with. And I'm seeing it now, this spiritual bypassing. And, you know, it's, you know, and teachers not wanting to, like, alienate their students or alienate their, you know, following or whatever. They want to stay quiet. I see some teachers who are taking a stand, or I should say taking a knee. And I think it's clear to have a firm stance and not be ambiguous or vague or kind of hide in the background. So for, you know, whatever it's worth, that's where my mind is right now. Thank you for letting me share.
I'd like to the situation going on in the world right now is one thing. In the context of just reading the lineage, hearing the lineage masters read tonight, where are the ladies? You know, it's like, where am I inspired from? I'm not a guy. I'm not part of this. I mean, it's different, right? Because there are women students now, can study with teachers, but it just feels like it feels distant to read these names and to not. I just wonder where the other people were, you know, where the other gender was and what their experiences were. And they're the token, you know, people that we can look at that are always consorts to the other deities and what have you. But what would the history be like if it were told with the female being the lineage holders? Like, what would that matriarchal lineage look like? And then even, like, I just went on to, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say his name, Daniel's teacher's name, Garwang Rinpoche's website as he was talking real quickly. And, you know, all of the monks are men, you know, they're all boys there. Where are
No.
the ladies there? Right?
Let's just correct that. There's a nunnery. Part of the monastery
That's
is a
part of
nunnery.
there. Okay.
And it's an
Yeah.
important part of it, right, Daniel? I don't want to speak for you, but that's what I saw it. You're muted, Daniel.
Rinpoche has many nunneries, and he's building another one in Nepal anyway. So this is a problem. Not to say this isn't a problem, but Rinpoche knows that, and he's working towards helping.
Yeah.
solve
I'm
that.
not picking him out specifically. I'm just saying in terms of like systematic, like structural kinds of things, you know, the monasteries seem to be maybe a little more important than the nunneries. I don't know. So it's just the inequity of it.
Yeah.
Christy,
Yeah.
if I can jump in.
Yeah.
Christy, I am so glad you brought that up, because this is something, there's another Dharma group that I'm part of that meets on Wednesdays. It's just moms. And we have been lamenting. We try to find readings every week to read from, and over and over and over again, it's men telling women about what it's like to practice as a mom. And it's something, and David, I would love to hear, like, I've got Pema that I'm digging through. She was who I went to today for my yoga class. Speaking of cultural appropriation. But it was just such an interesting thing to read her readings and think about it in terms of how many other female writers of Buddhist teachings, not even just Tibetan Buddhism, but just Buddhism in general. We've got Sharon Salzberg and Ann Cushman and Pema, and I'm sure there are a few others that I don't have on my bookshelf, but it's this sort of I mean, as a mom of a 2.5-year-old, I know where the ladies are. They're busy chasing the toddler. But I think it's something it's an interesting layer to investigate and to look at, that we as moms, Ann Cushman has a great line in her book Mama Sutra, where she says motherhood, I can't remember the exact line of it, motherhood is the practice of miraculously mundane, and that we don't seek enlightenment by leaving and going to the cave. We stay home with the fetter and find enlightenment there.
Thanks, Beck. Genevieve, did you have your digital hand up?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm hiding in the bathrooms because my kids are chasing after me because they wanted to contribute to the conversation. And I think it's wonderful that, the space has been opened up and women are speaking. And I just had a few comments to make just as some resources, because of course I'm in the midst of this too, having so much of my time and energy going towards being a mother and having a very strong hunger for the Dharma and trying to understand how they fit together. And so it's been a quest of mine to kind of understand and look. And so I just wanted to say, if you haven't read Women of Wisdom, it's a great book. And it's by Lama Tsultrim Aliomi, and who's also a great resource because she is a strong practitioner and teacher, and she comes at it as a grandmother, as a mother. And she's really into presenting the teachings coming from that angle and how to incorporate practice into motherhood. So she's a great resource, and the book is great because it does exactly that. It brings up historically women practitioners, tells their stories, in particular Machik Lobdram, who was an 11th century Tibetan woman. It goes deep into her story, and it's inspiring, and it's important for these stories to be known, especially for women, but especially for everyone, really. And I just wanted to also comment on what Angie brought into the group and say how important it is. And I'm just, throwing ideas out there, but I wonder if there could just be a step, where when we're doing our sadhana or we're engaging in practice or conversation, where there's just some acknowledgement. You know, it could be something that is introduced, like a few lines at the beginning of a practice saying, we are so grateful for, you know, where this practice comes from and that we're able to practice it. And thank you to all of those who came before made it possible, who come from this culture, you know, some way to just sort of make it direct that this is what we're doing. We're grateful. I mean, we can think about reincarnation. We can think of all kinds of ideas of why these practices work and make sense for us. But there is a piece, I think, of just that acknowledgement that we're borrowing this gratefully. So just an idea.
For the sadhana of Mahamudra, do you mean?
Well, not particularly the sadhana of Mahamudra, but just, and it's a question I'm asking. It's not like I have an idea of exactly what should happen, but it just was sort of sparked by what Angie said of like, you know, as we're thinking about kind of modernizing our approach to practice, and how do we, you know, just, is that an important step to include, or something that we should at least entertain, you know? So it's more a question than a suggestion, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
That's it. Okay.
Okay, I think I got fixed. Did I get fixed?
We hear you. Yay. Yeah.
Hey, did my own tech support. So that was kind of good, because what I wanted to say changed based on the other women. But when we looked at the Sadhana Mahamudra introduction of, you know, the priests are being paid, and, you know, this is all of Buddhism is, you know, being bastardized, I had to touch the paper to make sure that it was dry, that the ink was dry, because that's what we're looking at. You know, even yesterday, you look at Trump has to shoot bullets to go get across the street to a church to hold up a Bible. Like, we could have just read that soundtrack in the background, and it would have been a great documentary. So I think that swing that it took to get Trump and Putin, I'm a political animal. So Trump and Putin and Johnson and Kim Jong-un in power, it's going to take a pretty damn hard swing to swing them out. And it's been, you know, I got mine. I'm white, I'm rich, I've collected, I'm Jeff Bezos, whatever. And I don't cooperate. It's every man for himself. And I'm going to step on you on the way up. And that cooperative energy is coming forward. And this is not my idea. This is Susan Piper. But Susan Piper, you know, sort of brought this up first, that, and you want to talk about ass-kicking Buddhist women, there she is. That the cooperative energy is coming forward, and it's going to take cooperation. Nobody's going to ride in a white horse and kill the coronavirus and kill the race riots. It's taking cooperation. And what are women famous for? We are the cooperative energy. And that's the way that we've been all along, is cooperating. And we've just been waiting. We'll just wait over here and come forward. And there's days when I feel very, very sad. And I've been through my very sad piece. I have a 20 and a 21-year-old daughter. And, you know, there's some days when I'm devastated, like, sorry about the legacy, dude. But other times I'm really energized that the cooperative energy is going to come forward. And when I look at, like, there's no Trump rallies, you know, there's a plus column. And he spends every day looking more like an ass. When George Bush turns on you, like, I think we've got to swing. So that's sort of, and I don't know if I'm bypassing. If I am, I'm certainly enjoying it. And I'll get back to it later. But I feel like that shift in cooperative energy is what drives me during the day. And I just want to say, let's cooperate. And in my lowest times, I'm like, let's cooperate more. So that's it.
Susan, are you raising your hand? No.
No, I was just going like that.
Just waving. Okay. Yeah.
Just like, yeah, go, Melissa.
Yeah. Okay.
One more thing. So the other thing is I've talked a lot about with my own students, and that I love to teach about impermanence, but living it? Are you kidding me? We are living impermanence, and we've sort of been lulled into, oh, we think impermanence is there's a long line at Starbucks. Like, this is impermanence. And impermanence is not only burying us every day, it's also saving us, because we know the wheel's going to turn.
Melissa kills
Melissa
it.
Madam for President, 2024.
Yeah. Melissa kills in the Hollywood squares. Yeah. Gemma, how are you? Haven't heard from you for a while.
Can you hear me now? I was having audio problems. I'm pretty raw, I guess. I mean, I can just share how I'm dealing with this, and I'm going to be wildly vulnerable right now. I think a few years ago, what I've been reflecting on, a few years ago when I heard the term Black Lives Matter, I can definitely own that when I heard that, I didn't understand it. And I did say, well, don't all lives matter? So a few years ago, I'm lucky enough to have a community that can help me expand and really understand what that means and what that means now. And so I've been kind of really reflecting on that and how to help, or just to hold space for people like me who didn't know when I first heard that, what that meant, and not feel shame around that. Because I think there's a lot of shame around, or I've heard a lot of my friends say, I feel really shameful, I don't know what that means, or I'm a white male, especially millennials, like I have no idea what really people are feeling, because I am like the super privileged. So I've been just trying to hold space, and I think listening is the key. So just sharing that immediately, I didn't get it, what that phrase was, and it's such a powerful phrase, and now I understand, and I think there are so many resources out there to help people navigate that and support. So that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about. And then the other thing, I've been also having conversations around, I'm in Boulder, and there's not a lot of protesting in Boulder. There's not a lot of diversity in Boulder. And what else can we do? And actually my best friend is Black, and she and I have talked about a lot. Obviously, this isn't our first conversation about race. I've been with her in like the most horrific racial injustices when she and I are together, where like we've been refused hotels, and I've had to sign checks for her, and it's been pretty bad our whole lives wherever we travel. And so I was speaking with her about, she's in San Francisco going to the protest, and I'm obviously worried about her. And she was like, you know, I can protest in so many different ways. I'm not 25 years old anymore. And she's like, first of all, I'm a Black woman, I'm alive. That's a protest. I have my PhD from Harvard. That's a protest. I teach students, and it's, you know, when I teach people, that's a protest. And the artists I choose to highlight. And it just opened up so much more dialogue for me to understand like how just different ways we can support people in our community. If you can't join a protest, or if you're not comfortable joining a protest, there are so many ways. So I've been reflecting on both of those things a lot in the last week. I feel like my voice is shaking because I'm a little nervous. And yeah, so I guess that's how I'm doing, and just trying to keep the conversation open. I will say just one other thing. I work for an incredibly progressive company where we basically shut the company down today in honor of what is happening. And we also sent an email out to our customers about what our stance is on the current situation. And we got a lot of complaints. We got a lot of backlash for this. And as a consumer packaging good company, you know, everyone thinks like sales, sales, sales. We've obviously pulled our marketing. We've said, this is what we're doing. We're changing stances as a company. And I would like to see more of that and connect with more companies who are really taking a stance in diversity, and also like the right, not just the right messaging, but actually doing what they're saying. So that's also been really interesting because I'm a year old with this new company, and hearing how the response has been as well internally. So those are just some general thoughts.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jem. Sean, did you want to say something?
I apologize in advance. My internet connection is a little spotty. I was reading earlier in the book today about meditation, you know, during this time, how valuable it is. And I was reading a quote, the reason for teaching meditation on the true nature of the mind is that all phenomena are just mind. This means that the external appearances such as images, sounds, smells, taste, tangible objects are merely mind, and internal objects such as feelings and thoughts and pleasure, pain, attachment, and anger are also just mind. And I love when he says just, because it's like, I almost think, oh, no big deal, like, you know, but here we are looking at and experiencing such extraordinary phenomena, you know. Is there a way, is the suggestion that we can actually be looking at this? I mean, I look at the mind as like the lens upon which you take in the phenomenal world. It's hard for me to imagine looking at this. It's hard for me to look at, is there a notion here that we can actually look at this directly without the pain, attachment, so forth, etc.? Maybe too out there a question, but just it stuck up to me.
Well, if you don't mind me like taking a shot at reframing it into a context in which we can link it to the conversation we're having right now. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
There's a couple of things that, you know, when you just look and see, and it was alluded to, but there are no women in this lineage invocation that we just did. Not a single one. That's 1,200 years. Let's just everybody breathe and go, what the fuck? What is that actually saying? Now, the men, I've been in this tribe, I know how to do this. You go, oh, but there was this consort of that one, and there's, you know, Vajrayogini, and there's all these sort of celestial dakinis, and which are, you know, could easily be taken as a masculine romanticization of the feminine. But, you know, I think it's amazing to just look and say, well, okay, now I want to link it with what you said, Sean. So the perception is, it's mind. So whoever's having that perception, the negative part of what you said, from my point of view, the dangerous part is you just go, hey, look, it's just your projection. That would be how somebody would use that in a nefarious way to not listen to what somebody's saying. You know, you go to somebody who says Black Lives Matter, you say, well, that's your projection, that's mind, right? So it does lead towards a kind of absolute perspective, quote unquote, not an actual one, but, you know. So the question is what is the validity of the direct, one of the paths that was identified here is direct experience. And I don't have a lot of other paths available to me because I'm just not that good a student. So I'm using direct experience a lot. And then you just tune into the obvious things that are unsaid in any conversation. There was a total homage to what we're all interested in studying here. And the actual literal part of it was all men. So to me, I go, okay, we're over on the right side of the boat. Let's just tip it over to the left side of the boat and see what's going on. I'm not saying it needs to be judged or historically, it can be historically contextualized. And I do want to say that as far as I could tell, Trungpa Rinpoche was not continuing to suffer from that. He was inviting a lot of women into, you know, powerful roles in terms of teaching. So I don't think of our Sangha particularly as, and you know, the women can jump on me for this if you want to, but I could bring some aunties in here, you know, we got the uncles, but the aunties are powerful. And, you know, from my point of view, going forward is a completely different journey than going backwards. Completely different journey. So we can't just rely on these kind of abstract kind of perceptions of reality. and ignore the kind of direct experience. So I'm going to just go back to you, Sean. What's your direct experience? Is it mind or not?
Yes, mine. I mean, what I'm experiencing is, I almost can't. Sometimes you have moments where you can't comprehend what's happening. There's so much chaos and so forth. I mean, my neighborhood was, attacked yesterday, and everything's fine. But there's fear that comes up, and all that. I'm just taking in things rather. And again, I'm sorry if I sound rather pedestrian about it, but I'm just it's hard to articulate. And but I suppose that is mine because I am experiencing it.
Well, without supposing anything, and I'm going to throw this back now to the rest of the group. Without supposing anything, what experience are we having? What's the direct experience of the suffering? Yeah, Olivia?
Okay. I'd like to sort of move back to the discussion of women, because I think what I'm experiencing right now is the power of women in this age. And I think it struck me about a week or two ago, reading an article in the Times, that the women leaders of countries in the pandemic have been the most successful in containing it. New Zealand, Germany, and a couple of others. And I also listened to, I'm not in the city anymore, but just listening to Black women, often on Instagram or videos of them. And I mean, they are speaking so forcefully of the pain of their children and themselves. And it's just heart-wrenching. And it has so much power as mothers and as leaders in expressing the pain. And, to the extent that the other thing that lifts me out of feeling depressed about this period is I live with my millennial son, who is extremely sensitive to everything that's going on. And last night he showed me a video of a 5-year-old Afro-American little girl. I think it was a video, I think in some kind of town hall, and she was expressing her own just outrage at having to feel badly about her skin color. And he sat there next to me sobbing, listening to it. And I thought, if we can raise men in the millennial age who get it, and I'm not saying that men of my generation don't get it. I have a husband who gets it, but I look at these videos, and a lot of the people in the peaceful protests who are white are young people. And that gives me so much hope. And so I have this deep contrast of feelings of tremendous hope in particularly Black women speaking out in rage, and a younger generation of men and women who know that it is on their shoulders, because guess what? Us baby boomers have failed. I mean, not entirely, but we have a country run by men who just want to get fat and rich. And it's time for change. And they're the ones who are going to have to change it. And we can help, but our future is not as long as theirs. So that's my thoughts on the moment.
Thanks, David. Sorry if I took the question away from the topic. But thank you.
We can just bring it back in.
No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, David, if I could jump in there, even if it is mind, I hear a lot of us say, it's just mine, it's just mine. Okay, but that's not a little thing. Okay, it's all mind. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, right? So you still have to do something, is my point. Even with an absolute perspective, there's still relative truth. You still have to relate. So I don't know if I'm making my point clear, but even if it is all mine, let's say this is all my projection right now, right? Something still needs, I still need to do something. I still need to interact. And so to me, you know, what is a skillful way to act when we recognize it is mind? If that's the view we're taking, which is the view of this teaching. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, anyhow. Who hasn't spoken yet?
David, can I say something, David?
Yeah, Nick. You're very dark, but
I know I'm very dark. I'm trying to get a bit more light out here, but...
Yeah, okay. We can hear you, though.
Well, just what was said earlier about about leadership, you know, and there are a few examples, but watching Angela Merkel, how she has, the kind of leader she has become of a country like Germany, with that the history, the legacy, and her growing up in a totalitarian state, and then embodying sort of wisdom, compassion, and courage, which seem to be the kind of three essential ingredients for being able to not just lead, but sort of be at the moment. And, you know, when she took in 2 million Syrian refugees, she didn't hesitate. And she went right, and she almost, you know, that was almost the end of her career. But now, that move that she made to do that, because it was the right thing to do, has given her this extraordinary ability to stand as a protector of her country and of her people. And that decision, which was so courageous and so kind of huge, has actually transformed her, gave her this kind of energetic kind of power to sort of be this protective, because everyone now in Germany understands the moral courage it took to do that, and that it was the right thing to do, especially given Germany's history. So I'm just saying, I'm not sure exactly what I'm saying, other than those qualities are everywhere. But they haven't. How they can come to the fore and really take the stage, and make room for them to kind of really be the root of how this country and how any country, how this world is actually shaped and led and developed. Anyway, but I think then just to wrap it back to this idea of meditation, of how does meditation support acting in the world, embodying those three qualities of wisdom, compassion, which are the two, you know, that one goes with the other. And then that just naturally leads to courage, because your spontaneous response to the relative world is what it is, and there's no question, you know. Anyway, that's just.
Well, it's related to what Rebecca said. It's very close to what Rebecca said.
Yeah.
So I just want to say one more thing. I mean, we have some time left, so we'll use it, you know. Those of you who know me know there's no time limit. So if anybody wants to stick around, we can hang out. But I also, in my grown-up years, I want to respect other people's time. So we will, you know, stop around 9. But in the NBC world, which what I mean by that is nothing but coincidence world, which seems to be, you know, kind of the wraparound for me right now, I received something in an email, which is a Tara sadhana that was composed by Khandro Saringma, who is the second oracle of the Dalai Lama. And it's extraordinary. She's extraordinary. She's, I would say, for me, it's beyond the idea even of a teacher. She's like a kind of a module you can plug into the whole, multidimensional universe. She's extremely accomplished in a way that's maybe subtle, let's say. But she does, channel deity for Dalai Lama, but she also teaches. But she's not trained like in this sort of like linear, model of Tibetan Buddhism. So when things come out of her, they're very spontaneous and they seem extraordinarily timely and almost oracular. And so Daniel and Tara Goldman sent me this. She stays at their house. That's where I met her. And I don't have their full permission yet, which I tried to wrangle to get it to some of you. But I'm going to push, I'm going to nudge, because I think it's sort of as a sort of feminine version of the sadhana, practice that we're doing. It would be good for everybody to tune into it. And I felt like just illuminated by it and kind of juiced by it, as Michael was saying earlier. It had the juice. So I'm going to try to see if I'll just ask her, if they need to feel whole about it. I don't want to just give it out without some kind of permission. But I'll just leave it at that I'm going to try to pull that in, and so that we have a deity that's in the feminine dimension that we can invoke, and also her as a kind of presence to bring into this gathering. Personally, I am feeling, I think we tipped so far, good start, but we haven't really opened up the gates fully yet with this group to really have it be the juice that Michael, I think I really am trying to put the baseball in our hands and say, it's when you have the ball, you have to hit it or throw it, or maybe that's too masculine a thing, but I'm so glad that everybody felt comfortable enough to step in and speak tonight. It takes a listener and a speaker to have a conversation. So, and maybe I'm thinking in terms of balance and real juice, real energy coming out. The forms of these things have pretty much diminished for me personally. I don't care what form it comes in anymore. But I have a lot of respect, and I think the idea of having what Chris, who was it who mentioned, maybe saying something, Genevieve said, could we acknowledge where this came from to set this tone? And also acknowledge that if you studied, I just want to say a few things I'm a little bit kind of pissed about, or at least riled up about, is none of these Tibetan lineages have transmitted to the West fully and properly yet. If you want to talk about racism, I feel there's a racist element in that the Western teachers have crashed and burned to a certain extent. So the Tibetans, I'm sure, are saying, look, see, they can't handle this level of juice, this level of data. So that's an interesting link that hasn't been really established yet. And that's a touchy point. So how can we acknowledge the past? But I noticed that in this list of teachers, as soon as it went to Tibet, first generation, all Tibetan teachers from then on. It wasn't like they kept saying, we got to get Indians over here to teach us what the Dharma is about. It was then all of a sudden it's Marpa had to go to India, which is the equivalent of, us going to Tibet and going backwards to get the teachings. And then he went to Tibet, and then it's Tibet, Tibet, Tibet. And they absorbed it into their culture. They made it their own. And I strongly feel we have to do that. Otherwise, this light will be dim in one generation. It won't be shining brightly here. And I still see a lot of my friends are going, they're trying to establish the depth of their practice. And there's no doubt that the Tibetans are the lineage holders and coming there. But going forward, I think the empowerment of women, the racist, a full racial portfolio, ethnic portfolio. I don't feel guilty about being a white person doing I teach in Japan, Suke, right? So I don't feel guilty about it. I feel funny about it. And I apologize for it every single time, right, Suke? I apologize every single time. But I don't feel guilty about it, you know? So it's all good. And in our bones, let's just get the truth where we can access it. And, you know, I don't want to like do anything other than be spontaneous with the space we have together. But this was, from my point of view, really juicy. But I'll be quiet now. Let's hear more from. We have a little bit of time, so you know that's just a sort of spontaneous evaluation of where we're going. But it's up to you, as far as I'm concerned. This is the Tuesday night is completely up to you all what you want to do. I don't have an agenda, other than to get you guys knowing each other. That was my big agenda. And some people have started calling each other and doing things together and having fun together. And that was my what was left of my agenda. And maybe secondarily to really acknowledge the depth of Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings and all this swirling malarkey that's going on now of who's doing what to who. I couldn't give a fuck if you really want to know. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Can I add a little something?
Of course.
Thank you. This has been great. All that has been offered recently. Thank you. Really good. And there's no question, Tibetan Buddhism is got a big problem when it comes to women lineage holders. Huge problem. And we have to change that. So it's up to us. We can't look back to the past and try to start digging up stuff that probably really isn't there that much. So it's for us to, I think, improve on this situation. And I can see a lot happening in that direction. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kenmos as opposed to Kenpos, but Kenmos are actually starting to happen. Women, learned people. I don't know that there were Kenmos in Tibet. I never heard of one, but there now are Kenmos in the 21st century. So there's some progress happening, but we got a long way to go, I think. I wanted, though, before we close, to just point out a couple little ways that Trungpa Rinpoche talked about current events. And I know this may be difficult because some of you maybe weren't even alive in 1977, or you were, you know, not, you may not remember what was going on in 1977. But he used to write a poem. He certainly didn't do it every year, but he did it at least a few times, called International Affairs. And it was an opportunity for him to kind of just take a look at the world and make some comments about it. 2 of them are published. I don't know if there are more, but I know that at least there are 2. One of them is in this book, First Thought, Best Thought, which is a collection of poetry. This one is called International Affairs, The Cosmic Joke of 1977. I'll just read a few lines. In this God-forsaken place, so-called planet Earth, rainstorms, thunder showers, snow freeze, floods, and typhoons constantly occur. Somewhere there is good harvest. Somewhere there is famine. Shortage of something or other. And he then goes on for the next 4 pages. Every line is a little vignette of some person and event of what's been going on in the world. And I don't know if many of them won't mean much to you. Deng Xiaoping is resurrected like the Christ and planning capitalized communism. Brezhnev, half dead, thinking that he is a good huntsman and the greatest general in the world, choking with Stalinist nostalgia. Nixon, dead corpse, has made American statesmen into Carter embarrassment. He goes on and on. It's a lot of fun, but it's an interesting view into a person like Trungpa Rinpoche looking at the world. And the other poem that I know of is in another collection of his poems called Timely Rain. This one is called, let's see, International Affairs of 1979. Uneventful, but energy consuming. He ends here by saying, we realize that the United Nations is a rib cage without heartbeat or lungs, trying to do its best, in spite of China being chairman of the Security Council. Nothing gets done. We are sad. It is hopeless. We are happy. We could contribute. The state of affairs of the world is somewhat better than a male dog pissing on an appropriate bush. At any rate, you might enjoy them. They're interesting poems.
Thank you.
I just want to say this out loud so I can hear myself say it maybe. You know, the Dharma is something that is part of I think about it all the time. And in this moment in time, I could sit and read books and continue to think about these big ideas and how they're realized in my life. But right now, I'm just really unsure of how to act in the world to actually make some change and to be part of some kind of movement to make things better, which is bodhisattva activity, I could say. And the answer isn't really clear to me yet. And so I feel like I'm sitting on the sidelines a little bit. And I think that's actually part of the problem. So I'm just, you know, how can Dharma kind of be a guide for figuring out how to have real action and in the world to make a difference. So.
Good. It's a good note to pause. So I'd like to invite everybody to keep this situation fluid and juicy, which means participating in it. So that's why, you know, so if whatever communication comes in via email, we'll try to, like, you know, allow the direction to be threaded in. I still want us to keep looking at the Mahamudra because I have a hunch about it that it's, you know, going to be weavable into whatever else we are experiencing, because it's talking about direct experience. So let me know, would you please, if like Angie did today. Angie, that was good. Thank you for doing that. And you know, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be representing anybody but yourself, as far as I'm concerned. You can just come at it personally, and we will keep trying to bring it back. It is a Dharma hang, you know, so it's not, you know, we're not just going to be talking about the baseball game, you know, but it's a pretty open situation, and it's pretty gappy right now. So we're in the gap, but you know, I know every one of you, so there's I'm not surprised when power comes out from every person that's here. And I'm inviting it, and maybe if we can cook together, if there's some cooking together, or if it spawns you off, and some people want to go study more formally things, it'll spawn up into that for some people. Some people might want to collaborate on certain, you know, projects and so forth. Well, let's see what happens. But please communicate with me and with each other. You have the emails, and if you want to do something to the group, you can say anything you want as far as that goes. And if you want to just you know, indicate a direction or something that you would like to see. But I'm going to work on, from my side, I'm going to work on getting us to be able to do that sadhana from Gondola. I think it's just super extraordinary and completely relevant to the conversation we had tonight. So again, you know, big thanks. And I am going to find us some Dharma aunties. It has to be. We know some powerful women teachers, and we'll just loop a couple in. Larry and I will talk about it, and Michael, and we'll see. You know, I did invite, just so you know, Susan Piver got mentioned tonight. I invited her to come, but I didn't hear back from her yet about it. But there's plenty of other, you know, senior teachers that could get involved and help us bridge this. So let's just do the closing. Jant, if you don't mind, dedicate the merit. So, you know, I've just chosen this one because it's very general. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. Okay. Okay, let me know what's up, okay?